Good morning to everyone. We are going to start with our second chapter of your Unit 4, that is working with session beans. So we have completed our chapter 1 from your Unit 4. Okay, that was your introduction to Enterprise Java Beans, and there we have learned about the types of session beans. I told you there is first type is session beans, which is also consisting of three more types, that is stateless, stateful, and singleton session beans. And then the next main type was your message driven bean. Okay, so here in this chapter we are going to talk about the first type, that is your session beans, and the sub three types, that is your stateless, stateful, and singleton. Okay, and the next chapter is going to talk about the next type, that is your message driven bean. Fine. Now, when we are going to use the session beans, first of all, that we have to understand. Okay, you will be using a session bean under the following circumstances. At any given point of time, if you want to have only one client access to the Java bean, or you can say the object of a Java bean, you can go with the session beans. Okay, you don't want to have a simultaneous access, you don't want to have a concurrent access, only one client is going to have an access over the bean instance. Bean instance means the Java bean where the Java code is been getting executed. Okay, and the object of that Java bean is going to be created. Now the state of the bean is not going to be persistent. So where the second option you can have, or what is the second circumstances you is going to have, where you're going to use of the session bean. So the state of the bean is not going to be persistence, it is only going to be existing only for a shorter period. So you can use a session bean where you don't expect that your state of the bean is going to be maintained, or you can say it is not going to be maintained for a longer period of time, it is just going to be for a shorter period of time. The bean is going to implement a web service. So this is a third circumstances where you can make use of session beans, when you know that you are going to make use of, or you can implement a web service, so you can go ahead with the session beans. Now, following are the few examples where the session beans are used. You can use your session beans while performing some database operations, such as creating a new record. You can have a modifying or deleting of the existing records. You can also create reports also. You can manage the contents of your online shopping cart. Okay, so these are some few examples you will have where you can make use of the session beans. Like whatever things you're putting into the shopping cart, if you want to maintain that, or you want to maintain the state of that shopping cart for a shorter period of time, you can do. So I'll give you a best example of this. See, when we go online to the e-commerce site, you will have two options. Either you can add the things into the cart, or you can buy later, or you can have a direct option of buying the products. Okay, when you add into the cart, until and unless you will buy that product, it will be there in your cart. Okay, but once you buy that product, it is going to get automatically disappear from your shopping cart. Okay, I don't know whether how many people have noticed this, but you can try this. You just try to order something, put it into the cart first, and then try to buy something from there. And once you buy the product, it is going to disappear from your shopping cart. So you're not maintaining the state of your things what you have put it in your shopping cart. Okay, the buying the buying things whatever you're going to buy is going to be there in the record, but whatever things you're putting into the cart is not going to maintain a record for a longer period of time. Okay, now the types of session beans, we have three types of session beans, as I told you, that one is your stateless session bean, one is your stateful session bean, and one is your singleton session bean, which was being introduced in your EJB 3.1 version. Okay, now stateless session bean as name only suggests that it is not going to maintain any type of a client. Okay, it is not going to maintain any type of a conversation which the client and the server is going to have. Second, it is going to maintain the state, because the name itself saying that it is a stateful session bean. It is going to maintain a state of a client across the multiple requests which is going to be sent to the server. Okay, and singleton session beans means there's only going to be one single instance been created for the per application, and it was been introduced in your EJB 3.1, where the instance of an application, when I'm going to make the singleton session bean, so it is going to have a session using this type and is going to be available throughout the life cycle of an application, and one object and one instance has been created for that application to get identified in the web server. Now, before we start with the other topics, we need to understand two important topics here, because these terms are going to be, used in the further slides. So this is important. So first one is your annotation. So what do you mean by annotations in EJB? So in EJB, basically in 3.0 version, so there the annotation was been introduced first, and the Java version, if I talk about, so the annotations came into the existence when the Java 5.0 was introduced. Okay, so you can just say that if you have remembered the evolution of the EJB. So in that, if you remember that we had a Java 5.0 version where, or you can say the Java 5th version, there we have introduced the EJB third version. Okay, so EJB is a technology which was been introduced in the previous version of Java, but the EJB third version was been introduced in your JDK 5, or you can say the Java version 5. Okay, so the annotation was a part of your EJB third version, and it was also said that it was came into the existence in the Java 5.0 version, that is fifth version. Okay, now annotation basically is going to allow us to attach some additional information which we want to provide it to the program. Okay, so for example, why you provide a comment? Because you want to provide some additional information regarding the code what you have done it. Okay, here it is not going to be like a comment, because comment is generally been ignored by the compiler, but the annotation is not going to be ignored by your compiler. Okay, it has been taken care whatever annotations you're going to define in your program. Even it is going to help your compiler to understand your development environment, is going to get the help to understand that what type of a Java class or an interface or a methods or a variables you are providing it to the program. Okay, so annotations can be used in EJB. EJB is itself having number of its own annotations which can be used in a program whenever we are going to develop an application using an enterprise Java bean technology, that is EJB technology. The additional information that can be used by the development environment, like whatever information we are going to provide with the help of the annotations of EJB, it can be helpful for the many development environments like your NetBeans IDE. It can be for helpful for the Eclipse. It can be helpful for the Java compiler to understand the deployment tool. So there are many even the runtime environments are there, like your Java EE containers, your web servers, okay, your servlet containers, your JSP container, like similarly like that. So you have an EJB container also, which is going to take an help of this kind of an annotation to understand more your program. What your program is trying to say is going to be more understood by the help of the annotations if you are using in your programs. Fine. Now here the annotation can also be called it as what, a custom Java modifiers, because it can be used by hand, like for handling the Java source code, like the way your Java compiler is doing it. It can also help you to handle the byte codes like your JVM is handling or the containers are handling. Okay, annotations are going to use to affect the way programs are going to be treated mostly by the tools. Okay, this is very important. You have to understand it over here, why the annotations are mostly being used, that you are telling your programs or you're telling your development environment that how they have to treat your programs, how your programs are going to be used, or how what is going to be the effect of the program what you are writing for your application, to make your container understand, your environment understand, your development tools understand that how they have to deal with your programs whatever you have written for developing an application. So that annotation is going to help the all the available platforms like your development environment, or you can say your uh, containers. Okay, so they'll be taking help of annotation to understand your program more in a better way. Fine. Now the next topic, which is also very important term, you can say. So I hope everyone has understood what annotations are. Let's understand what is the next term, that is dependency injection. Okay, and that is also been introduced in your EJB third version. It was a new feature which was being introduced in your EJB third version, that is 3.0. It was like solving the complexity which was being generating with the JNDI lookups. I hope everybody knows about the JNDI. It is Java Naming Directory Interface. Why it is been used? It is been used for the manual references of the you can say the resources of the concepts which your program wants to identify, that which it's like a dictionary. So if I want to take any help, it is going to be present inside your container. So if the container wants to identify that what program is having the concept which may be not been given the information with the help of the developer, maybe the developer has not given information about some concept, so it can have a reference of that concept in the JNDI. It can just look up to the JNDI and it can identify the some concepts. But here you have a concept that is something called as dependency injection. It is going to remove some complexity which JNDI is carrying. JNDI first of all is going to have a manual lookups, manual references. Okay. Secondly, it is going to have the resources from the container, or you can say it is going to inject a managed resources from the container. It can be from your environment like EJB container. It can be from your JMS, Java Messaging Services, what we have learned. So if you remember that whole diagram of the EJB container, where we had an EJB client, we had a home interface, we had a local interface or remote interface, you can say, we had an EJB bean. Okay, and we also learn about the Java messaging services which we'll be using for email notifications and all those tasks. So if at all anything's complexity occurs in all these places, so we can try to find out the, you can say, the help. We can also find out the solutions with the help of an JNDI. But the only thing is that we need to just try to find out from the container with the help of a manual JNDI. So that means you need to write a hard, like you have to do the hard coding. You have to do the coding in your program to make your program to take a help of a JNDI manually with the container. So that is what you're going to have an overburden of writing the JNDI code. Okay, that code you have to write as a developer. But when we talk about the dependency injection, there you're going to remove this disadvantage. There you are going to make everything independent of each other. You don't need to depend on the manual lookups. You don't need to have you can say the manual references from the container. That is the job of the container when we are going to implement the dependency injection into it. Okay, so the when we try to implement the dependency injection into the container is itself is going to take the help. We don't need to write a separate code to make the container understand, okay, this has happened, this complexity is there, so we need to make use of JNDI lookups and we can refer it and we can solve the complexity. So that you don't have to do it when you're going to use a dependency injection. Okay, so as I told you, it was been introduced in 3.0. So in the earlier versions of EJB, the resources was being able to access by only with the help of an JNDI lookup by the manual references. But now in EJB 3.0, the resources can be injected by the JNDI lookup as it was there in the earlier, along with the dependency injection. So basically what is going to happen, the all components, okay, whichever you have inside your Java bean, and all the components which are there in the enterprise Java bean container, who is responsible to communicate to each other. Okay, so if they're not understanding, if they're finding some complexity to interact with each other, so JNDI is going to have the problem, but dependency injection is going to remove that problem. Is going to have that interaction very, it is going to be very smooth in between these two components. They're going to be interdependent of each other. They are going to be loosely coupled. That means they're not dependent on each other. Loosely coupling means what? They're not dependent on each other. If I'll say tightly coupled, that means they are highly dependent on each other. Okay, so they are interdependent from each other. They are going to be loosely coupled. That means they are not going to be dependent on each other, and this is going to reduce the complexity, and it is not going to make use of every time the manual references to check the manual you can say the resources, or it is going to take the access of the resources manually. Now in the end, with the like dependency injection, As I told you, you don't need to write a lookup code as you have to do it in terms of JNDI. But when you are going to make use of you can say the dependency injection, you don't need to write a lookup code, you don't need to write a JNDI code. You can make easily any changes like by swapping out your beans and the resources as needed. It is also going to allow you to declare the component dependency and lets the container deal with the complexity. So previously what used to happen when we use the JNDI, first of all, we need to write a JNDI code, okay, to deal with the complexity whichever happens into the container. Secondly, whatever complexity happens, it was a part of a developer to deal with. Now here what is going to happen when we are going to make use of dependency injection, it is like one of the feature we can add while programming or while coding it. Okay, whenever we are going to make use of technology called as enterprise Java Bean, when we try to create an application, okay, all those steps of creating a project, so there you have an option, okay, where you can implement the dependency injection, like you add web.xml file by checking, so you have an option to have the dependency injection where you can insert the dependency injection inside the container of your server, okay, inside the EJB container. So for that, once you have done, you don't need to make use of, or you don't need to write the lookup code in your program, okay. But once you, if you are not including the dependency injection in your program as a developer, then you need to write a lookup code. Okay, so the very first disadvantage what it removes, once you add the dependency injection in your application while creating it, it will not make you to write the lookup code, JNDI code. Also, it is also going to reduce the complexity. It is going to have the interdependency of the component. The container is itself is going to deal with the complexity. Now it is not more going to be the part of the developers. Okay, so I hope you have understood these two concepts, annotations and the dependency injection. In short, if I'll just let you know, the annotations are something which will the container is going to take a help of it. It will try to understand that what your program is trying to say to the container, and that what task has to be done by the program in the container, that you can do with the help of annotations. You can also compare it with the comments. The comments is something like you're providing it to make the other person understand that what your lines, whatever you have written, what does it mean. But here it is not been ignored by the container, here it has been taken by the container. It will take a help of those annotations, okay, it will be read by the container. The second one was your dependency injection. Dependency injection was saying that it is, you can say, the replacement of your JNDI lookup. Not a replacement, it is also going to take a JNDI along with it. But the only thing is that not only depending on the JNDI, it is going to take the JNDI, but it is going to have the dependency injection as a feature while we are going to create an application, and when we try to include the EJB files in our application. So that time we have an option to add the dependency injection, which will make our container to work more, okay, make the developer to work less. It will not allow the developer to write a lookup code where if I'm just sticking to the JNDI and I'm not going with dependency injection, then as a developer I have to write the lookup code also, because that lookup code has already been written in your dependency injection, and which we are going to try, which we are going to add it into your container, which we are going to add it into your application whenever we are going to create it. So we don't need to write it again the same thing. Okay, you can also consider it like, I have an EJB file, I have just created an web application. Okay, in that web application I have an HTML file, I have a JSP file, I have a Java file, and I have an EJB file, .ejb file, which will indicate that is an enterprise Java Bean file. Okay, now in that, while creating the EJB file, you have an option when you're going to get a window where you're going to able to see the dependency injection as an option which you can use. And once you have been added that, it is going to allow you not to write a lookup code inside your program. And if you're not adding it, then you have to write it. Fine, I hope now you have understood what you mean by dependency injection. Okay, so now we are going to start with the types of session beans. The very first type of session bean is what? Your stateless session bean. Stateless session bean basically going to represent only the business logics. Okay, whatever code or whatever the logics, whatever you have written which needs to be worked between your client and the database, it has been written only in the stateless session bean. Secondly, the name has also been saying that it is not going to maintain any state, it's not going to maintain any type of data which is there in the interaction between your client and the server. You can also say in the other words that the conversational data between the multiple clients or the multiple method calls is not going to be maintained by the container in case of this type of a session. Okay, you can have this stateless session being objects, and it's been provided by the EJB container, is going to be helpful to you can say to make use of the services when there is a request on demand. You have three annotations in stateless session bean. I hope you have understood what you mean by stateless session bean. Simply, it is not going to maintain any type of a state or a conversational data between the multiple method calls or the multiple requests or the multiple clients with the servers. And secondly, it is going to have a stateless session bean object which has been created by the EJB container. Third, it is going to represent the only business logics. Fine, these three things you have to remember about this particular type. Now you have three types of annotations which you can use in stateless session beans. The first one is at the rate stateless. So whenever you are going to start with your program, okay, and you will try to create or you will try to add the EJB file. Okay, I hope I have shown you the adding of the servlet files and adding of the web.xml file, if you remember that steps. Okay, so similarly you are allowed to add the EJB file. Okay, using of EJB technology means what? It's not only the normal Java file where I'm going to write number of import statements of EJB. No, on the platforms like NetBeans, you need to add the file, okay, externally into your application. So add the file. Whenever you're going to add a file, it is going to ask you that which type of a session bean you are going to use. So you'll have a three option to check. Okay, either it is stateless, either it is going to be stateful, or it is going to be singleton. So it is going to be radio button. So either one, you like any one you can use, not even two you can use it together. Okay, so you'll have a radio buttons to select any one out of three types. So for example, if you'll select stateless, so automatically in your program, once you complete of creating the file, EJB file, automatically in your file at the rate stateless is going to occur, because it is going to hint to your EJB container that you are going to use a stateless session bean. Okay, no. Second type of annotation is at the rate post construct. So it is going to be called before the client is going to run any type of a method. That means before invoking any type of a method by the client, so this method is going to be called. Okay, before constructing or before calling your methods, the post construct is going to invoke, because after this post construct, your all the methods details are all have been written. Next is what? At the rate pre-destroy is basically used for handling the exceptions. Now the next type is what? Your stateful session bean. Now stateful session bean, as I told you again, it is going to maintain the state, unlike your stateless session bean. Is also going to have an object which is going to represent your stateless session bean. Also it is going to also it is going to have a business logic like your stateless session bean. So in stateless we had maintaining business logic or working only with business logic. It is not going to maintain the state in stateless, and also it is going to have the, you can say, like maintaining the conversation. So in stateful also we have a business logic, maintaining of business logic. We'll have maintaining of the state of the interaction or a conversation between a client and the server. Also it is going to have an object which is going to represent your whole stateless session bean. Okay, here we have annotations which is going to be used in stateful session bean. Five annotations we have. One, at the rate stateful. So as I told you, while creating the EJB file, you have an option to click any of the type of session bean which you want to use it, either stateless, stateful, or singleton. So if you click on to the stateful, then at the rate stateful annotation is going to appear in your EJB file, which will indicate to the container that you are using this stateful session bean. Post construct, the same what we have studied in the previous one, stateful. It is being used for where the client is going to call the methods, and pre destroy is for exception handling. At the rate pre passivate and at the rate post activate. So basically it is going to tell the container to do something before passivating. So if any activity needs to be happen, okay, so it needs to be informed to the container, And if you want to do that, like before any activity happens with your program, or like if a like method invocation, anything, any activity you can talk about, okay, in your application, if any activity is going to be occur after certain lines of code, then you can write at the rate pre passivate. So it will indicate the container that okay, after this annotation, whatever has been written is meant for is going to inform to the container that something is going to happen. So you need to give the hint. So post activate is going to do the exactly reverse. It is going to tell the EGB container that what has happened after this annotation. Okay, it has been for after activating. Now, the next type of session bean is what? Singleton session bean. Now, singleton session bean, as I told you, it's a Java class again, but it's an EJB file. You are going to write a Java code into it, but it's an EJB technology. Here, the application is going to have one instance, which is going to be there or existing in the whole life cycle of the application. Okay, it is also consisting of the business logic. Okay, it has been introduced in the EJB version 3.1. The rest two you can say the types, stateless and stateful, was been introduced in EJB 3.0, but it was been introduced in EJB 3.1. So again, it is having the same thing for having consisting of the business logic is going to be like it is going to be there in your JVM. So whatever object basically you are going to create for the singleton session bean, okay, basically not you, the EJB container, what is going to be creating the object for your session bean, singleton session bean. So it is going to be globally shared within your Java virtual machine, is been identified globally in your Java virtual machine. So once your lifecycle gets over of this particular session bean, so your object is also going to get destroyed. So what annotations we are going to have? We have at the rate startup and at the rate post construct. So at the rate startup annotation is going to cause the bean to be initiated. That means it is going to help the bean to initiate the container to start with the application. At the rate post construct is going to hint that the method call, like before the method call, that what needs to be done or whether the session bean needs to be initialized. So this post construct is going to help to make the container understand that what it has to do it. Okay, now the next concept is what your remote and the local interface. If you remember, in the container of the EJB container, we had the whole diagram. In that we had EJB client, okay, and in the EJB container, or you can say inside the server, we have an EJB container. So always remember when I talk about servers, so let's consider what server we are using it. So we are going to use Glassfish server basically, okay. So in that Glassfish server, there is a defined containers are available for different technologies. So we have a container for servlets, we have a container for JSP, we also have a container for EJB. Okay, so in EJB container, we have two things available. That is, one is remote interface and the local interface. Okay, I hope you clear. Just remember the diagram. I don't know how many people have been understanding and remembering the diagram. The diagram was very important. The EJB container. So we had an EJB client as not like if you're not able to remember, so I'll just give you more details about it. So if I told you whenever we are going to code something for the EJB using EJB, so we need to make sure the EJB client should always been written in the Java. Okay, if not, then we need to implement some web services in between for handling some other object oriented language which we can use writing in the EJB client. Okay, so that diagram is very important. So there we had two things, that is, one is remote and the local interface. So the local interface, or you can say the home interface also for the local interface. So the home interface was about to take the data from your EJB client, depending upon whether it has been written in your Java or it has been written in your some other language, and which has been converted into the Java by the web services. Okay. So once it is been taken from there with the help of an home interface, it is been passed to the remote interface, which is going to use a concept called as marshalling and unmarshalling, and it is been converted to the byte stream and byte values, which has been passed to your EJB bean, where the execution of a Java code has been done. Okay, so here the same thing, the remote and the local interface, I don't need to repeat it again. Whatever I have just said, it has been used for the same need. Local interface is been used for the local client, or you can say the EJB client is going to be the first one who's going to take an input from the client. The remote interface is something which is going to pass the data after marshalling or converting into byte to the EJB bean, where actually the byte code is needs to be get executed, and the response which has been generated, which has been passed back to the remote interface, it will unmarshal. That means it will reconvert it to the client's language, and then it is going to show the output. Now, how you're going to access the local business interface, or you can say the local or the home interface. Basically, you have two options that we have already learned. That's why I told you that annotations and dependency injection I need to explain to you so that you will understand it more in the further slides. So this is a slide where the actually it's saying that how you're going to access the local interface. Okay, so the client need to access your enterprise bean, so enterprise Java bean. Okay, so you can make use of no interface view. You can also make use of the dependency injection. You can make use of the annotations. So these are all the options where your client can access your home interface. Fine. So if I'm saying I'm a client, I'm going to code something, and my client code, whatever I have written, I want to pass it further where it needs to go to the server, and inside the server it should find the container, and inside the container it should find something called as a home interface or a local interface through which it is going to communicate, and after the communication needs to pass it to the remote interface. Okay, so for that need I need something for that accessing, so I need to write something into my client page where I can make my client page to understand that how and where it is going to access the local interface. Okay, so there, what we are going to do, we are going to make use of dependency injection. We are going to use a JNDI lookup. So all these concepts, annotations will help the local interface to understand that what the container has to do with the program, how the program is going to, having the flow of the program and how it is going to help. Now, client is going to access, using the dependency injection. So basically, it is going to have the dependency injection by making use of a package called as javax.ejb.ejb annotation. So if you want to use a dependency injection, what you can do is in a program, simply what you can write is @ejb, the way we have written it over here. Okay, and this annotation is going to come from a package called as javax.ejb.star. Fine. So this is like, if you want to create a dependency injection for your container, you don't want to write a JNDI lookup code in your program, that how the manual references, how the lookup is going to happen when we are trying to access something called as enterprise bean or a container. So that time what you can simply do is you can make use of the new feature which has been introduced for EJB. If you want to avoid writing a lookup code, if you want to have a client access, okay, so you don't want to use a lookup code, what you can do is you can simply write @ejb in your program. That is the annotation, something called as the dependency injection. Okay, and it comes from your javax.ejb.star package. Now, how you're going to write the JNDI lookup also, like you have two options. Either you can go with the dependency injection or you can go with the JNDI lookup. Okay. So we have seen that how we can write the, or we can make use of dependency injection. So I'll give you the clear difference. So if I'll make use of dependency injection, I just need to use @ejb. If I'm just going for the JNDI lookup, not using dependency injection, so I need to write something, this kind of a code. Okay, so instead of writing javax.ejb.star the package, what we can write is javax.naming.initial context, or you can simply write javax.naming.star, because this package is responsible to provide the JNDI lookup. Okay. Now, another way, once you import this package, what we have to do, we have to write this statement somewhere in my program, that initial context dot lookup is a method which will help you to have a manual reference using the JNDI. So initial context dot lookup, inside the lookup method, what you can write is java colon module will indicate that you want to access, or you can have a client access over the local interface, home interface. Okay, and you can write the EJB file name over here. Understood? So this is like using the JNDI lookup. So you have to import a package also. You need to write the class name, that is your initial context, which is, or we can say the interface name, that is initial context, which is going to have a method called as lookup, which is going to help you to have the manual references for the home interface. You can access the home interface, which has been indicating by the term called as module, and you can write the file name for which you are implementing JNDI lookup. So this whole thing you have to do it for the JNDI lookup. But if you want to replace it with dependency injection, what you can simply write at the rate EJB. Fine. Now, next is what accessing the remote business interface. So we have learned how to access the local interface or an home interface, and you can also have an access of the remote interfaces. How we can do it? Similarly, you have two options. Either you can go with the dependency injection or you can go with the JNDI lookup. Okay, when you go with the JNDI injection, just import a package called as javax.ejb.star and write at the rate EJB in your program. Okay, and similarly, if you want to go for an JNDI lookup, what you can do, you can just have an import statement, that is javax.naming.star, and out of which you are calling the initial context interface, which is consisting of lookup method for JNDI, which will have the java colon global. So in having the client access to the local interface or home interface, we write module, and for the remote interfaces we write what, global, and you can write the EJB file name to which you want to apply the JNDI lookup. Fine. Now we'll have some life cycles of all the three types. The first type is what your stateful session bean. So we have three stages over here. First is what does not exist. One is ready. One is your passive. Okay, so does not exist. So it is going to first of all going to check whether the object of the session bean is been available or not inside the container. If it is not, then it's going to the next phase where it is going to create an object of your EJB. Okay, once it has been created, so business methods or the logic has been written, so that is going to be now executed inside your ready phase. Once it is done, so it is going to check whether your EJB has been activated or passivated. So that means we need to check for the container whether, like, basically we not we but your container is going to check the whole life cycle of stateful session bean. So it is going to check whether the EJB has been activated or passivated. So how you're going to make your container understand that your EJB file is consisting of activated or passivated method. So if you remember that annotation at the rate activate at the rate passivate, so depending upon that annotation, your container is going to work ahead. Okay, so once either it is activated or passivated, what is being used for, if you will make use of passivate, so it is going to make the method call before the client is going to access it, and the activity is always exactly the reverse of it. Okay, so once it is done, so the timeout is going to happen and it's going to be back to the first phase. So that is something called as a stateful session bean life cycle. So does not exist means the bean instance is not going to simply exist. We are considering that the bean object is not available. So if it is not available, it is been passed to the ready state where business logic is going to be executed, and the conversation is going to be maintained between your client and the server. Now, passive means it is less active. Okay, you can say that also. The bin instance is been passivated state to conserve the resources. So if it is not activated, if it is not using the resources, we can also say that it is been, less active. So it is been called by the client before the method gets invoked. So if we don't invoke the method, that means nothing is happening. Okay, once the method gets invoked, then actual, activity starts in your program, then your actual calculation starts in your program. So until and unless your methods get called by the client page, so till that it is going to be in the passive state. Now the next type is what your stateless session be. You have only two steps over here, that is one is does not exist and one is your ready state. So does not exist, again it is saying that it is going to check whether the instance bean has been created or not. If not exist, then only it is going to the ready state where the business logic has written, and it is going to execute that, and is going to be removing that object again, not maintaining any type of a state. So it is same what I just said. Does not exist means it, the bean instance not is going to be existed. Once it is not there, like checking after that it is not there, then it's going to the ready state when the EJB server is going to start execution, is going to have the bean instance, but it is been removed also once the execution is getting completed. So no maintenance of the state. And then comes your singleton session bean. So in singleton session bean, we have again the two steps. We have the does not exist step, and then we have a ready step. So here also it is going to happen the same way what we had in the stateless session bean. Okay, but the only thing is that it is never been passivated. That means a singleton session bean is never been passivated. That means it is always going to be in activated mode. Okay, it is never going to be less active, and it is not going to wait for the method calls. So it is always been activated, and it is also going to have the dependency injection if it is required. It can also have a post construct callback if required. It can also have a exception handling by making use of @pre-destroy method. Now, last thing we are remaining with, that is packaging of the enterprise bean. So you need a jar modules. So what do you mean by jar files? EJB jar files, which are something called as portable. It can be used in many various applications. It is in something called as a file, or you can say the libraries, or you can also call it as an API, which is there in the development kit for the enterprise Java bean to work well with the platform like NetBeans or the another platforms like Eclipse. Okay, so jar files are required. So if we want to make the container work the way we want to, so we need a jar files. Okay, so like for example, I want to build the connectivity between an application to the database. I need a jar file. Okay, that jar file is even available externally. It is not there in the development kit, so we can just download it externally, add it into the uh, existing jar files. Okay, existing you can say in the development kit of the Java, and I can implement that jar file easily for the database connectivity. So similarly, for enterprise bean to work with the EJB or container, we can make use of the EJB jar files, which will allow me to work the way I want to work with the EJB. Okay, so it is very much portable. It is having, or it is composed for the web application frontend, as well as it is going to help for the application backend also. It is going to have the two modules, that is WAR, and the another one is your EJB jar file. Now, what do you mean by WAR? Which is going to consist of something called as class files. Okay, it is going to have some class directories also. It will also have some web application information like what you had in web.xml file configuration information. That also you can have it in your web.inf folder. The web.inf folder is going to consist of all the jar files. Okay, all the library directories, and the way you had web.xml file, the deployment descriptor for your servlet, you can also have an XML file for your EJB. The name is EJB-jar.xml. That is a deployment descriptor for your EJB. So don't get confused. You have a deployment descriptor in every technology. You need to maintain it because it is going to help you to maintain the web application information. So this kind of a XML file or a deployment descriptor is present inside your web INF folder, which can consist of more class directories. Okay, it can consist of the jar files also, and it can consist of the XML file also, that is a configuration files. So servlet is going to have web.xml, but in here in EJB is going to have what? EJB-jar.xml file. That is also called it as what? Deployment descriptor. Okay, so there we end with this chapter. And in this chapter, what you can take as an important topic is the types of session beans. Learn all the three types of session beans properly. One question is going to be definitely coming from this three types. Either it can ask you the explain a stateless session bean. You can have a question for a stateless or singleton session bean, or it can also come like explain the types of session beans in enterprise Java bean. So that is also a very good question. You can have all the three life cycles in short, and in brief you can write. Okay, now I'll just stop sharing this. If you have any doubts, students, you can just let me